And as I say, they always said too, if you want to change the world, you do it through the female. Nero said it, Hitler said it, and Hitler said that the woman wants security and food for her children. She goes for the powerful person. Therefore, we will aim our propaganda at the female. She will come to us for safety and food for her children. The children must follow her and then must follow the man. But it's also true that all the studies, even long before Kinsey, the real studies, that have been proven over and over again, show that women are far more apt to try change than men will. And so they thought they would change the world through going for the female. Bernays said the same thing too, that she'd become the purchaser. The guys would die off, very rich widows would have lots of money. And then they would target them to get the money off them. But also the UN goes through a strategy of basically emasculating the males in every country. It said, you've got to get the males out of the way if you want to conquer and rule them. And they've been giving microloans, as they call it, for years to women all over Africa and different countries to start their businesses up, giving them computers. Canada had a big rally for used computers, and the government sent them all over there as well. Only for women, though. The men have to be left on the sidelines until the women no longer want to look at them, because the men will still be poor, you see, and the women will be looking for better things. Here's an article here, and it says the United Nations creates what may become $1 billion agency for radical feminism. New York, July the 8th. Last Friday, the General Assembly voted to consolidate 4 separate United Nations bodies dedicated to women's issues into one new gender equality entity called UN Women. The resolution capped a victory for radical feminists who lobbied for years for the new entity, and is the latest in an overall push to bring women's issues even more into the UN agenda. I think I mentioned years ago, I walked into a club once where different musicians were taking turns on stage, and someone knew who I was and they asked me if I got to play a tune, so I did. And he says, can't you sing something more radical? I says, why? And this was a feminist, and she says, because you see, we get funding to run this club by the government, and you've got to be radical to do it. And I looked into the law, and sure enough, it says in the government, only those who are for radical change will get these grants. Your own governments have been doing this, folks, in every country since World War II. And they joined the United Nations. It says here, after 4 years of sometimes harsh negotiations, member states agreed on simplifying the disjointed efforts of 4 UN offices dedicated to women's issues: United Nations Development Fund for Women, that's UNIFEM, the International Research and Training Institute for the Advancement of Women, INSTRAW, and Division for the Advancement of Women, DAW, and the Office of Special Advisor on Gender Issues and Advancement of Women, OSAGI. That sounds awfully African. The framework for UN Women that's actually a Zulu spear, if I remember, a saga. Anyway, the framework for the UN Women is the Beijing Platform for Action, which calls for an end to discrimination against women, especially highlighting education, employment, political participation, and human rights. The Under-Secretary General, appointed by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, will head a new body, and member states are calling for prompt appointment before the General Assembly meets in September. Now remember, this is all funded by your tax money over here. And if you look at all these countries that were ex-Soviets, the women are all fleeing those countries to get men abroad, because they were taught coming up through school, and because of the priority hiring, even during the Soviet era, that their men were nothing, they were no good, they were defaults for all the world's previous problems. And they were marrying everybody outside their countries, selling themselves, really. The newspapers are full of them even yet. That's what they do. And that's what they want to do in Africa and elsewhere, so as they can conquer them. And the men will stand up for nothing when they have nothing to stand up for. This is warfare tactics. You understand warfare tactics? And it's interesting too, as I say, that so much of the news really is just to do with the agenda. It's just the agenda. I've talked about Britain and other countries across Europe, and it's the same in the US right now. As 1 baby in 4 born to migrants, number of foreign-born mothers has doubled. and this is 22nd of July, and it's from the Mail. Almost a quarter of babies are born to immigrant mothers, an official breakdown showed yesterday. And it found that 24.7% of children born last year have mothers who were born abroad, and that their numbers have doubled since the late 1990s. The sharply rising numbers of babies with foreign-born mothers came despite an overall fall in births. You see, the overall fall in births happens because the native-born people there can't even get someone to marry or mate with. And they don't want children because it's been drummed into them. Charles Galton Darwin was right. Would they rather have a sports car or a washing machine? And of course it doubles the tax base when everyone's in it. So only the ones who are coming in who are immigrants and who haven't had that indoctrination are happy to have children, naturally. Something that they used to have in those countries that are falling apart. You should be happy to have children. The figures produce fresh warnings to ministers that immigration rates must be brought down to avoid the growing threat of overpopulation in Britain, but they're not going to do it because I read articles again from the ministry a few weeks ago where they said that they'll keep it going. Numbers of children born to mothers from outside the country have been growing fast in recent years as immigration has reached record levels. In 1998, there were 86,456 babies born in England and Wales to mothers born abroad. These mothers are considered likely to be long-term migrants by statisticians. Last year, the total reached 174,400, according to the figures from the Office for National Statistics. It's like Orwell, isn't it? You've got an Office for National Statistics. That's why you heard blaring on the Orwell movie 84, is it the national statistics for this and that and the other. So, everybody's talking, but the thing is to keep the coming in, just as Tony Blair said he would do. He opened the floodgates wide. He says to destroy what was left, completely destroy what was left of the culture of Britain so it could never form itself again. And it's intentional. So on and on it goes. See, this show is not about good news. It's about the war. It's about the war. You see, everything that's happening in the world and every country is the one war, the one and same war. All financed in various ways by the big boys, either attacking your culture, destroying your culture, or literally physically assaulting you. It's all the same big group at the top that's in charge of it.